welcome to the start of the Midland Public Library's International Women's Day celebration on today, Monday, March the 15th. This month, we've chosen to celebrate the accomplishments with women through a series of interviews, candid conversations with women in unique careers. And you can join us every Monday in March at 7 p.m. for these special guests. My name is Jennifer Paquette, and I'm the Adult and Teen Services Coordinator here at MPL, and I'll be your host for this evening. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. Midland Public Library acknowledges and is thankful for the opportunity to work on the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, which includes the Chippewa, Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa people. We especially acknowledge the Chippewa of Bosley First Nation and Rama First Nation, who were the stewards of the lands in and around Midland. We also recognize the Métis nationhood currently represented in our community by the Georgian Bay and Métis Council. We recognize and deeply respect their ongoing and historic connection to these lands. These connections need to be clearly and overtly articulated as part of our collective agreement to make the promise and challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our community. We're so pleased to be hosting Ashlee as our next guest in this series. Born and raised in the area, Ashlee is a two-time graduate of the Georgian College and has been a volunteer firefighter for the past 15 years. She was the first female firefighter in history at the Penetanguishene Fire Department and has assisted with the training programs for local fire departments, as well as preparing and teaching medical training for town staff and fellow firefighters. In addition to her role as a volunteer firefighter, Ashlee has also been a 911 communications operator for the past 12 years, assisting citizens experiencing an emergency, dispatching necessary departments and personnel, and answering any questions and concerns that may arise. Ashlee fills her free time with friends and family, being active and getting outdoors. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Ashlee Hebner. Ashlee, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
We're so glad that you could be here to help celebrate International Women's Day and to share your journey with us. So thank you for that. Let's jump right in. So your career is a little bit of a twofold. So you're both the communications officer with Barrie Fire and Emergency and a volunteer firefighter with the Town of Penetanguishene. So can you break down sort of each of those roles for us and tell us a little bit about what your roles and responsibilities are?
Sure. So the communications operator, I'm with Barrie Fire and Emergency Service. So they've been doing communications since 1984 there. And it's changed over the years, gained a lot more departments. We now dispatch for 20 municipalities, and that's in Simcoe County. There's parts of Gray, Dufferin, and Muskoka. So they range from way up in Lake of Bays and Huntsville, right down to Agila, Tosserano, and everywhere in between. So we're roughly about 500 to 700,000 people that we dispatch for. So just a little stat, in 2018, we dispatched approximately 200,000 calls in a year. So I'm sure it's gone up in the last couple of years with everything going on with COVID and all that, but yeah. So what we do in that job is we receive and process 911 calls. So when people call 911, you're actually not talking to us directly, depending on where you're calling from. So for example, we use Midland. You're calling 911 in Midland, you're going to get an operator from North Bay. That's the hub center. So they'll say 911, do you require police, fire, ambulance? You say fire if you need fire. You'll come to us at Barrie Fire, and we will, if you know your address, we'll put it in the computer, or we'll find you if you don't know your address by asking different questions. They're going to ask pertinent information. So what's going on? Where are you if you know it? Describe what's going on, your phone number, your name. What we do is we put it into the computer. So it's called a CAD, so it's a computer-aided dispatch. So once we put it in, it tells us what trucks to send in what area, but we still have to know where you are before we do that. So as soon as we get that, we can dispatch the appropriate fire trucks and kind of go from there and gather further information. So there's never really a delay with us asking information. It just keeps going on. We also dispatch non-emergency calls. We also take non-emergency calls. So let's say somebody wants to have a bonfire this weekend and they're looking for information on permits. They can call the fire department, any of the 20 municipalities, and say, hey, what do I do? How do I get a permit? Right now with COVID, most of it's online, but we can still guide them on what to do. And then we do other things too, like on downtime, there is some downtime. So we'll do like exercises, so mapping exercises. mean, with 20 different municipalities, that's a big section of land and water that we need to know where things are. So we may do some exercises with each other. We do some just other work. There may be some issues in the system with trucks and stuff like that. So we can do a lot of that stuff. So it is a very rewarding job. So it's a lot of people think, oh, it's, you know, it's 911, it's always an emergency. It's not always an emergency. You could have non-emergency stuff as well. So
you must be really good navigating in the car, like a human GPS. You must know.
Sometimes, sometimes we're good. Sometimes you'd be surprised how many people call and say, I have no idea where I am. So you got to ask like landmarks, like, do you see a Dairy Queen or a McDonald's, like Tim Hortons? There's always Tim Hortons, that kind of stuff, or the highway. Be surprised how many people don't know where Highway 400 is. They call it Highway 11, or they call it, I'm going through Barrie on the 401. No, that's the 400. Like, and yes, it helps with GPS and all that stuff. And if they're calling from cell phones, we can get a rough idea of where they're at, but people make the mistake sometimes where they hang up and we can't reach them. We can't call back in. Maybe they're in poor cell service or that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's pretty neat. So that's in a nutshell what the communications operator side is of it. So for volunteer fire, so I'm with the Town of Penetanguishene Fire Department. So they were established back in 1891, way back. So I am the first female on the department in history. So that was pretty neat. So right now we have 28 members, 28 volunteers. We do have a second girl that's in the process right now in recruit training. So that is really neat. We have a full-time chief and a full-time deputy, as well as an administrative assistant. So their chief and the deputy are full-time, so they work during the day, Monday to Friday. And the volunteers we get pagers. So if we get a call for service, we each carry pagers 24/7, goes off, our pager goes off. We then get in our personal vehicles and we go directly to the fire hall. Some departments, they have gear with them all the time, so they go right to the scene. We in Penetanguishene go directly to the fire hall, grab our equipment, and get on the fire truck and go. So, and again, we do other things too. We do a lot within the community. Midland and Penetanguishene do. So we do McHappy Day. We do Fire Prevention Week up at McDonald's or Home Depot. In the past, we've done that a lot. And we've done a lot of stuff with cancer as well too. We've done a couple of the cancer walks. So we don't just fight fires. I mean, there's other things to do too. We go into the schools and do some public information or public education in the schools as well. So that's really fun to do that with the kids. And we do a lot of joint training too. So Midland and Penetanguishene do training together sometimes. So once a year, twice a year, because we do work together sometimes when there is big fires or big calls. We also do a lot with like the police and paramedics. We may do training with them or see what kind of equipment they have, especially the paramedics. We've had an ambulance come in a few times to show us what they have if we need to help them. So that's kind of neat in that sense. And we also do a lot of duties in the hall as well, because we are volunteers. When there is a call, maybe not all 28 of us are going to go to the call. Some people might be at the hall waiting for the truck to come back. So we do like, sweeping of the floors and make sure the hall's tidy as well. Make sure the other trucks that didn't go are clean and that kind of stuff. So
nice.
It's definitely, and a lot of us, you can pick and choose as well too, like what calls to go to and what calls not to go to. I work full time, so I'm on a 4-on 4-off schedule, so I might not be able to make every call. But when I'm around or when I'm home, then I can do that.
Is that when your pager is on, when you're around and when you're at home versus when you're at work?
Yeah, so when I'm at work, I'll shut the pager off, or if I'm out of town, like just say I wanted to go shopping in Barrie or whatever, then I'll turn the pager off because it's not realistic for me to have it on.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a question that you might not know the answer to, and because it might be different, but my husband lately, he goes to a gym here in town, and he has like been in the gym with other like people who attend fires that get calls. Now, would that, like if you're a professional versus a volunteer firefighter, like does it work the same? Or
so in Midland, as an example, they're a composite fire department, so they have 10 full-time firefighters that when they're on duty, they live at the fire hall.
Okay.
So they're cooking, they're having downtime, they're running calls. They also carry pagers on their time off. So they kind of, if there is a call, they will come back to that call as well, like a volunteer. They also have volunteers. I believe they have 20 volunteers in Midland as well. So in certain calls, the volunteers will come to the hall like we do in Penetang and grab the equipment and go with the guys that are on duty to calls. So yeah, it's kind of neat.
Okay. Well, I know it's really neat for us civilians when we're around, when someone gets the call, we're like, oh, something's happening.
Yep, I have friends that still get excited if my pager goes off. Oh, can I come with you? Yeah, they can wait in the parking lot, but they've been with me a few times, so they'll take my pager and listen while I'm at the calls. But now with the new technology too, a lot of smartphones, the call will come right on your smartphone.
Right.
But they want to keep with the pagers because, I mean, you can only get so much information on a smartphone and you can only depend on them so much, right?
For sure.
So, and cell data and all that stuff.
Of course.
So
did you always want to be in fire service?
I did. I grew up with it my whole life. My dad was a firefighter in Midland as well. He did a little bit of firefighting in Penetang as well and was the deputy chief for a bit. And my grandfather was a volunteer in Midland. So I grew up with it my whole life. Way back when I used to go to fire calls with my dad, they used to respond directly to the scene. So I used to sit in the car and was able to watch him and the rest of the firefighters. So I've always been around it. So I knew from when I got to high school that I really wanted to do that, some part of firefighting. I wasn't sure really what.
That's a great story. And we sort of touched on this when we first chatted, but your mother must be like, you know, well versed in what it's like to have your
she's
family
used to it.
Do you have any siblings, Ashlee?
I do. I have 2 younger brothers, and neither of them are in emergency services whatsoever, and they have no desire to be in. So they're used to it as well. They don't even blink an eye when they hear the pager go off. So
it's not so much a novelty for them, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's chat a little bit about the journey to get where you are. What was your education and training background like? You're a 2-time graduate of Georgian College. Let's chat about some of those programs.
So I did schooling here in Midland and Penetanguishene. I went to high school and elementary school here locally. Then I went right after high school, went to Georgian College in Barrie and did pre-service firefighting as well as the paramedic program. So pre-service firefighting was a full year. And then I jumped right into the paramedic program because I wasn't too sure if I wanted to go the fire route or the paramedic route. So I did both programs. I was told that they're both very good for either job. So I did that. And then after that, I got a lot of different fire certificates or certifications from the Ontario Fire College up in Gravenhurst. That's where a lot of the local departments go for training. So I did some there. I've got my license to drive fire trucks, which is your DZ. And I also have, it's called a DFZ. So I can drive a paramedic unit as well. So I've maintained that. I've had that when I first started school, so many years ago. So I've kept that and maintained it just in case. I was always told, make sure you get it before you start your career. So I did. I'm also a first aid CPR instructor with the Canadian Red Cross. So I've maintained that over the years and just kind of built my skills on that. I teach my own firefighters. I help teach Midland firefighters, as well as I teach the Town of Penetanguishene staff as well. So whether it be a recertification or a full course, we do that at our fire hall. So I have that as well.
And so you go to the pre-service. So I can imagine there'd be a lot of transferable skills between the two programs that you've done. And so you do the pre-service program, pre-fire service program. And when you're looking to get a job after that, or get in on a volunteer firefighting team, what does that process look like?
So the process for the volunteers, it's quite lengthy now. I mean, back in the day, you used to be able to, if you knew somebody, it's like, hey, come on, come join. And away, you just grab your gear and away you go. Now it's a lot different. So online now they post when there is a job posting. I know for sure in Midland, Penetang, Tiny and Tay, kind of how it works, because we do it's called a joint training or a joint recruitment. So they do it all together. So once they find out that each department needs people, they kind of do a joint thing. So to begin with, there's like an application process. So you go online, fill out the application. You then go to, depending on who's hosting it. So sometimes it's in Midland. all the people that are interested come to like an open house or an information session. They bring their resume, their cover letter, their certificates that have something to do with fire. They bring the application, and they kind of can ask questions, like a question and answer thing, so they can figure out how the process goes. So after that, they write like an aptitude test, fire specific aptitude test, and then they do a physical fitness, like a job related fitness test. And if they pass that, then they have an interview. So it's like when you get any other job, when you have an interview, they do that with the chief. And I believe there's one other representative from the department that's there. And after that, if they're successful and they are a pick, then they start a program. So it's weekends. It's about 100 hours, I believe, or a little bit more now. That was a few years ago, where it was about 100 hours. So what they do is they do specific training. Right now it's Southwest Fire Academy that does it. We used to do it internally with the 4 departments, but now I believe Southwest is doing it. So what they do is they bring them on the weekends, and they just kind of start from the beginning. So this is what, how to hold a hose, how to put up a ladder, how to do a search for somebody if they're trapped in a house fire, auto extrication, that kind of stuff. And then after that, you go to your department that you applied for or that you got on with, and you do specific stuff with the department. So you're what they call as a probationary firefighter or a rookie for a year. So they have sign-offs they have to do and that kind of stuff. So I know within our own department in Penetanguishene, you're put with like a mentor, and that person, assists you if you have questions or kind of shows you the ropes of what to do. So it's a very lengthy process.
Yeah, it's like I say, the volunteer is in the title, but it's just like any other job, or more so, because there are more things to go through, as there should be. And for someone like yourself who's been in fire and emergency services for so long, is there a continuing education piece? Is there something that you have to regularly retest for, or?
Yeah, so there's a certification that we maintain, but it just depends on kind of if you're a career or if you're volunteer. So when I was I started in the Township of Tiny Fire Department in 2006. And when I moved to Penetanguishene in 2009, I was able just to come right on because I kept up with my skills doing training, because we do train twice a month. Some departments are a little different. I just know with Penetanguishene, it's twice a month that we have training, so we can keep up on our skills because it's always something different. So like, let's just say next week, maybe like search and rescue, just giving them, because we don't do a lot. We're not a super busy department, but when we are, our skills are down pat because we were training. We've totally kept up with everything. And we make sure every firefighter, is kept up with all the training. And if there's questions, this is the time to ask it.
Yeah.
So
you want to make sure that those skills are top of mind when you do need them.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. So fire service is a very male-dominated field. As we've mentioned, you were the first woman in history since 1891 to be a part of the Town of Penetanguishene Volunteer Fire Service. So would you describe this as an obstacle that you faced in your career journey, and what was it like to be a woman, breaking into the field like you have?
I was actually quite lucky. When I started in Tiny, everybody was very, protective, and it was great, but it also, at the same time, I wanted to get in there and do stuff as well. And it was, no, how about you go do this? Or no, how about you go do that? Because a lot of the guys had children my age. I started very young. I was only 19, 20 years old. So they were very protective, the older firefighters, but they never gave me a hard time. I proved to them at the start that I could do it. And, I said to a couple of them, you have to let me do it. I have to do it. But they were never, rude or mean or anything like that. I was very, very lucky. And same with Penetanguishene. When I went to Penetanguishene, most of them knew who I was through my dad. And I did 2 rounds of co-op when I was in high school in Penetanguishene. So they all knew kind of who I was. But the same thing, I had a couple of the older guys that said, no, how about you just go over here and do this? And I'm like, no, I can do just the same as what you can. So it was more like they were kind of trying to father you a little bit. They wanted to kind of protect you, which was great, but I wanted to be treated the same way. So, but I never had any any negative issues with either department. I was very, very lucky.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
And so now there is a second woman on the team in Penetang, and so do you see, and your experience with the fire emergency services, do you see that landscape sort of changing a little bit?
Yeah, I do. Slowly, it's changing. I think a lot of people just get a little nervous. I did notice the last time I helped out with recruit training 2 years ago, there was a lot more females coming out to do the fitness testing. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of neat to see. And they asked questions, and I gave a couple of them my number and said, hey, if you have any questions, some of them are going through schooling. Mm-hmm. And I mean, same with the girl that's on right now. She did co-op with the department. So most of the guys know who she is. She's local. So everybody knows everybody. Mm-hmm. So I just said to her too, if you have any questions, let me know, kind of take her under my wing a little bit and be like a mentor when she does come on. Mm-hmm. So.
Great. It's great to see that there are more women coming out for recruitment and that's starting to change a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question that's near and dear to my heart. Television shows about emergency services are among my favorites and are super popular at the moment. So are they anything like the real thing?
Most times they are very dramatic on TV. I wish calls were that easy, especially the new one that's out, that dispatching show, the 911 show. I wish it was so clear and calm and cool and collected like a lot of those people. It's not like that all the time. And all the firefighting shows too, they're so dramatic. They're going into a house fire with no smoke. Mm. But there is some of them that are real, like when the guys they're sitting in the firehouse and they're all chatting and being friends, and when they leave they're hanging out. That does happen, which is, people are friends. Doesn't mean you're always going to be friends with everybody, but it does happen. There's lots of joking and that kind of stuff as well, but most of those shows have a lot of drama. Definitely.
Well, I suppose that's what they're there for, the entertainment. But it's good to know that the camaraderie piece is there, and because you guys are working so closely together in such dangerous situations, so you've got to sort of build that. I would imagine you've got to build that trust and that camaraderie.
Yeah.
Can you share an interesting story that's happened to you since the start of your career?
I don't have anything super interesting that I can put out there to everybody that's appropriate, but I think the kind of a cool thing that I've noticed in the past with both departments that I've been on is I meet a lot of people going to calls or doing public events, and I have a lot of people that approach me and say, hey, I remember when you were 3 years old or this big, and now look at you, you're here, and that's really cool. And or they've known my father and my grandfather or any of my family. Being local, they're like, oh, we know who you are, we know your dad, or we know your mom. I think that's really neat, just to see how tight-knit the community is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really interesting. And it makes you proud of what you do. It makes you proud of being the department as well. Mm-hmm. But that's about there's not a whole lot of interesting things that go on. There's
right. Well, and you touch about on an important topic of privacy. Like, it's not like you can discuss a call that you've been on or a call that you've received. It's not something you can discuss publicly. So I think that's an important note as well. But yes, that's definitely the Southern Georgian Bay effect of being born and raised and working in that kind of a job. So
yeah, definitely.
That's great. Do you have any interesting or little known facts about fire service that you'd care to share with the audience?
I'm not sure how many people know, but volunteer firefighters have green lights in their car. So there's a little green light that some people put on their dash. Some people have them right at the front, like in the grill. There's lots of different types, but the green light is a courtesy light. So when we're responding to fire calls or to the station, we put on this green light, and it's a courtesy for drivers to give us the right of way if it's safe to do so. So they pull over to the right and we can pass them safely. Doesn't mean we're allowed to speed or drive erratically, but it's a courtesy thing. A lot of people don't know that. I know in Tiny Township, there's little signs that they have around the community telling people that their volunteers use green lights. Mm-hmm. Town of Penetanguishene, we do have some that use them as well. Mm-hmm. Because some people may not work right in the town, right? They may work in Midland or in Tay or in Tiny. So every second counts when you've got to get, you have to have at least 4 firefighters on the truck to leave the halls. So especially during the day, or, when Waypoint or Super Jail are doing shift changes, Fuller is very, very busy. So that's where our fire hall is located, is just off of Fuller. That's where we bring the trucks out onto. So yeah, it's like a courtesy thing.
Well, and not only that, you've got Tech Forum that's right there doing shift change also.
Yeah, all the different factories in there.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't know that they had those lights.
Yeah. They're a very bright green. There's many different types. I mean, most people just have them that sit right on the dash. Some people have them, they'll just put them underneath their like the rear view mirror, so you're able to see. But
an interesting fact that I learned this summer, not through my experience, but through a friend, is that firefighters don't in fact rescue cats from trees.
Nope. And people call all the time when I'm working as a communications operator. They call all the time. Can you come and get my cat out of the tree? I've seen it on TV that you guys do that.
Yeah.
So, you have to, some people's cats or dogs or birds or whatever, those are their children. So you have to have respect, and you say, give them some tips on what to do. So put a can of tuna or their favorite treats at the bottom of the tree and just walk away. Because a lot of people go there and they start shaking the tree, or they're going to, they're trying to yell down for their cat to come down. That's just startling them even more. So, but yes, they do call, and I have had somebody call because their bird got out of their house and went in the tree, and the bird was not listening to the lady when she called it back.
Oh no.
So she wanted us to go up the ladder and get her bird.
Oh no.
So
it only happens on cartoons, folks, not in real life.
Yeah, definitely not in real life.
I have a question, a side note that just came to me when we were sort of talking about the green light and permissions to speed in that. You've got your license to drive the fire truck and the paramedic vehicle. So when you're responding to a call and you're driving an emergency vehicle like that, are you going the speed limit, or does it go over, or like what are the sort of standards?
What they always say is they want you to drive the speed limit because you're no good if you crash the fire truck. You have to use care and control like you do in a vehicle. Can't be driving erratically. It depends on what the situation is. If it's let's say a house fire, you may drive a bit over the speed limit, but you have to do it safely. You have to come to a complete stop. Even if the light is red, like any emergency service vehicle, you have to come to a complete stop, look both ways, then proceed through the intersection. Because you're going to be no good if you crash your fire truck. You're not going to help the people that you're trying to go to help anyways.
No, of course.
So you definitely have to. I mean, those are big apparatus, and they're full of water. They don't stop on a dime. Some of them are horrible in the wintertime. You just have to have care and control for sure.
That's fair. Something that I was recently thinking about. Like, I wonder how fast that, because it always feels like when you're the one who's pulling over to the right, to the side, and you're watching, you're like, yeah, it's going really fast. I'm like, actually, I don't think it really is. It's just that it's got no traffic in its way.
Yeah, and they're big trucks. Some of them go quick, and you have to remind, if you're one of the people in the truck, you got to slow down, because adrenaline kicks in, and you're just, especially if it's a bad call, you're trying to get there as fast as you can. But you forget sometimes if somebody pulls out in front of you, you're not going to be able to stop like you can in a personal vehicle.
Yeah.
And when you're driving, you're accountable for the other 4, 5, 6 people that are in those trucks with you. And trucks have rolled in municipalities close to here, definitely have before. And there's been accidents where it's literally been an accident. People, a lot of citizens, they kind of freak out and they go, oh geez, what do I do now? And they forget to pull to the right, they may pull to the left. So you have to really be able to drive like that. And we take a lot of defensive driving courses as well, just to teach you how to drive safely.
Interesting. Can you share a story about a funny mistake you made when you were first starting out and what you may have learned from that?
Well, there's been many, but one that came to mind after I thought about it a little bit after the first time we talked is when I did co-op for the pre-service fire program. I was with the Aurelia Fire Department. So we had approximately 6 months of co-op. So we got attached to a platoon and we stayed with them. So when they worked, we were there with them. So we had a very bad, I think it was the summertime, we had a very bad storm come through the Aurelia area. There was a lot of rain. So we had a lot of calls for, you know, flooding in homes and, you know, people trying to pump out their basements and that kind of stuff. So we had one in a part of Aurelia where a lady called and said, hey, can you come help me? There's water coming in my back door and it's not going out the front door. Can you help me pump it out? So we went and assessed the situation. And I was told by the captain, hey, can you go back to the truck and get a few equipment things? So I said, okay, no problem. So I trudged across the front yard, which was all water, and I went into a ditch to my waist, just over my waist. So, and I was stuck. There was mud at the bottom of it. So when the guys peeked their head out the door to see where the heck I was, they had to come out and pull me out.
Oh my.
And so we just chuckled, had to still do our job. I was soaked inside of my pants and my boots. So when we got back to the hall, I sat on the floor and emptied out my boots, a full boot load. And after that, the captain called me Flipper. That was my nickname for the rest of my co-op term. So it was a funny situation. I learned my lesson. I learned to, you know, don't try and take the easy way by walking across the front yard. I should have went down the driveway that I could see, but I was tired and learned a lesson not to cut corners.
Well, that's cute. And I'm sure that some of us, maybe not to that extent, but I can definitely appreciate being stuck in the mud once or twice. So that's funny. None of us are able to achieve success without some help along the way. Is there a particular person that you're grateful towards for helping you get where you are?
Both of my parents have been very supportive, especially my dad being in the fire service as well. He gave me a lot of tips or tricks, and, you know, they both really pushed for the schooling because, you know, when you're out of high school, you're like, well, I don't know, maybe I'm going to take a year off. Maybe I'm going to go to college, university. They really helped me go forward to do both of my college programs. And another one would be Chief Ryan, who is the fire chief of Penetanguishene and Midland Fire. When I did co-op there, I would go in and talk to him. If I had any questions, I would ask him and just say, like, hey, what courses would you think that I should do? Or he would just, you know, give me a lot of the information that I needed. Instead of, because sometimes, you know, you don't want to bother your parents all the time. And I kind of wanted a different perspective sometimes as well. So I found with him, he was very forthcoming. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, no problem. He told me cut and dry, like, yeah, or no, or maybe you should do this, maybe you shouldn't do this. So it was really neat to have that person. And still to this day, I still go to him for, it could be the craziest situation, but he's such an easy person to talk to. And he always has such a positive outcome or positive outlook on things. Mm-hmm. And he's not afraid to tell you exactly how it is. He's not going to sugarcoat it for you. He's going to say, you know what? I don't think this course is for you, or, you know what, why don't you try this course? And right now I am a training assistant in the Penetang Fire Department. So I do a lot of training with the firefighters. And I kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit a couple of years ago about doing the course. And he's like, you know what? Go and do it. Just go and do it and see if you like it. And I love it. So it was kind of neat. Sometimes I need that little push because I get intimidated a little bit, more of kind of like, oh, what are people going to think? Or what happens if I mess up? Or if I don't, you know, you're never going to learn everything in the fire service. I know what my weak things are and I admit to what they are. And he gave me that little extra push. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Having mentors like that, like your dad and Chief Ryan, who have been in fire service for so long, did they help prepare you for what it means mentally to be in the fire service? I mean, you're dealing every day with whether it's in your job as a communications operator or the volunteer service, firefighting service. These are heavy things.
Yeah, they both did. I mean, when my dad was a firefighter, a lot of the stuff would be, you know, the guys would get together and talk about things that were bothering them. And sometimes they would, you know, not say it out loud. They would keep it in and bring it home to their families type thing, or not say anything at all. Now with the times changing, we are very fortunate in Midland and Penetanguishene that we have a great program for mental health. So, you know, we have a psychiatrist that comes in. If you need anything, there's numbers to call. We can tell, especially being a smaller department, with us having 28 firefighters, we can tell when somebody's having a bad day or needs to talk, or we can see the difference in them. We did one, I think it was last year, where we actually had our spouses come in with us and talk to somebody as well. So if they had any questions, because I mean, we have a lot of questions, but being a spouse to somebody in emergency service can be very difficult. They might not know what to say or how to act and that kind of stuff. So that was really neat. So the Town of Penetanguishene has a great program. It's absolutely phenomenal. And same with the city of Barrie. Like when I'm working as a communications operator, we have a team and everything. So it's very neat to see that it's come so far so quickly.
That's great to know that those of you who are responding or encountering some people on what may be the worst day of their lives have those supports available to you to be able to talk about that. And for your spouses as well, I can only imagine, complaining about your day to somebody who works in something like emergency services when it's not exactly apples to apples.
No, and I think it's hard too, like if you don't have a spouse that is in emergency services, it's hard on them because they don't understand, and it gets frustrating as that person when you're trying to vent and you're not really specifically saying anything about the calls, you're just, I had a bad day. Well, they don't understand what that bad day is. So, and I mean, most of the guys, their wives have been in this long enough where they understand. And it was so nice to have this little program that we're going to do, I believe, every year. So if, especially some of the newer firefighters, if their spouses or other halves are like, you know what, I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on. They can talk one-on-one, or we can talk as in a group.
That's great. It's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about a career accomplishment that you're most proud of?
Both of my careers I am proud of. Being a volunteer, I'm extremely proud of. I love doing it. I love being able to now be a training assistant. That's a huge accomplishment. I never actually thought I'd ever do that. So that's pretty neat. And a communications operator, I'm full-time now. So just being full-time and being there 4 on, 4 off is a huge accomplishment. So, and especially in Barrie, I've always wanted to work in Barrie Fire. There's lots of growth in the department, and they're just a great department to work for. So, which is.
And when you're working in Barrie, are you doing 12-hour shifts or?
Yeah, so it's 12-hour days, 12-hour nights. So 2 days, 2 nights, 4 off.
Interesting. Well, that's those are great accomplishments, and especially being one of the only girls, in those departments when you were first starting. That's a really great accomplishment as well. Gosh knows I wouldn't be able to do anything that you do. So hats off for sure. And one of my other questions here is, what advice would you give to women seeking to begin a career in fire service?
So I think like the first thing would be never to give up. Don't take anything from everybody. If somebody says you can't do it, prove to them you can, or get the assistance. I always found it helped to get like a guidance counselor or a mentor that you were able to speak to. It doesn't have to be a female. It could be a male. It could be somebody you know. It could be somebody you don't know. And ask questions. Constantly ask questions. I know that was kind of one of my downfalls when I first started. I was a little bit shy or a little bit timid. And I was like, I should probably know this, so I better not ask. Now I know there's no, like they always say, there's no dumb question. Always ask questions. Keep your head up. Live a healthy lifestyle. So whether that be, if you have downtime, go to the gym, go outside for a walk, be with your family, be with friends. I know it's a little bit hard with COVID right now, but, just try and eat healthy, stay active, just keep up feeling good. And a lot of people too, they get hobbies. So whether it be, some people play ball hockey, or maybe they knit, or maybe they have a dog. So they, go to the dog park on their days off. So, and set realistic goals as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that might say, oh, well, by the time I'm 25, I want to be a millionaire. Well, you have to get to that, right? And, I used to set goals really, really high in my life and say, well, I want to, be married, have a child, have a house, have an awesome career by the time I'm 30 years old. Things don't work out that way sometimes. Sometimes they do, and that's great, but sometimes they don't. And you don't want to let yourself down. So that's what I found is a big thing. For sure. Is just setting realistic stuff for yourself.
That is great advice. A question about living a healthy lifestyle made me think of, do you have to go through a fitness test after you're recruited, or like on a regular basis, or no?
So in this area, we don't. In some of the areas south of here, you do. I don't know if that's going to be changing in the next couple of years. It may be, but we try and keep up, like in our own department, we try and do a lot of like active stuff when we do training to try and keep up with that. We have a small gym in our fire hall. I know Midland does as well. So that guys, even if they want to come in on their own time to work out and to keep up with their skills, a lot of them do it, you know, they might want to do it together, kind of challenge each other. So that's kind of neat. I know we do that in Penetanguishene. We can challenge each other. We put it on a board, and we're always trying to beat or one up each other. So
for sure, a little
there's nothing
competition.
Yeah, there's nothing really set in stone saying that you have to do it every year, but most people just go do their own thing.
I can imagine while you're doing your training, you would find out real quick if you weren't feeling up to it.
Yep, big time.
But that's one of the remarkable things I remember from our first conversation when you were talking about going through the training is that you'll find out really quickly if this isn't for you.
Yep. And that's why it's good with the training. Like they try and make it as realistic as they can. So they have like a house that they can put smoke in, they can get fire going in it, that kind of stuff. It's all in a controlled environment, but it will really let you know if you're claustrophobic, if if this is not for you. And it's okay if it's not, but this is the time. And this is what they say in this recruit training. If you go, you know what, I can't do this anymore. The stuff's too heavy, or I'm too claustrophobic. Fine, great. We wish you the best. Maybe you want to try in a couple years. Don't know. And some people don't realize, like, it's a dedication, right? I mean, it's a lot of weekends that you have to do training when you first start in this recruit program. So it's a commitment, definitely.
For sure. And I can imagine that your time is not your own always if you're on call.
Yeah.
And you get a page, you're going for not only yourself, but your family as well.
Yep. And you do, like, when you're told everything, especially like in the interview and stuff, you're told, like, okay, you must, 75% of training throughout the year, you must make, or make it up if you can't be there. You must make 60% of calls. So, and you do get warned if at the end of the year, you don't have those hours, you may have to make them up, especially for training. And we're pretty flexible. I mean, most on our department, we know what each other does. So some work in a factory, some work in institutions. We can easily find days where we can make them up. But it is definitely, and people have kids as well. So like our training's at nighttime. Maybe that doesn't work for them. But you're definitely told everything at the beginning, kind of what the structure is. Right.
The lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm a librarian, as you know. So my last question is to do with books. Tell us about a book that you love.
So I like James Patterson. Mystery, murder stuff. I just find it suspenseful and it's reading that doesn't take a lot. I don't want anything that's going to hurt my brain. So it's very, you can't wait for the next page, but it's also not hard reading. But I have about 7 of his books and I enjoy it.
Yeah, I can imagine that they're good to escapism, because you don't want to have to think too hard necessarily, because I'm sure, after a 12-hour shift or what it is, you're exhausted.
Yep.
Oh, that's great. James Patterson is a good one, and he definitely does those page turners. Well, Ashlee, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us this evening. And thank you for all the important work you do in the community, for putting your own health and safety and the safety of your friends and family on the line to keep the rest of us safe, and for being a helping guide and supporting those people through what may be the scariest or most distressing moments of their lives. We really appreciate it. And it's really important what you do. So thank you for that. Thank you to the audience for joining us. This is a reminder that daylight savings time began yesterday, and that now is an excellent time to change the batteries in your smoke alarm and to ensure that your smoke and carbon monoxide detectors in your home are in perfect working condition. These devices will save your life, as I'm sure Ashlee can attest to. We continue our interview series next week with our special guest, Ashlee Hebner. Ashlee is a machine vision specialist at Automation Innovation Incorporated. I know what you're all thinking. I don't even know what that is. What does that even mean? Ainsley works in robotics and is among the just 28% of women who follow careers into the field of science, technology, engineering, and math. So you can join us for that conversation on Monday, March the 22nd at 7 p.m. for more on Ainsley's story. Thank you so much again for your time, Ashlee. It's been a great chat, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.